Welcome to the deep dive. Today, wow, we've got a huge landscape to cover. Real estate. The materials you sent over, they're incredibly wide-ranging. We're talking architecture, finance, urban history, even property management.
It's a lot, absolutely. And the mission here for you listening is really to go beyond just, thinking about houses as places to live.
Hmm.
We want to explore property as this central engine for wealth, for social policy, for how our history unfolds.
Yeah, unpacking the structure, the money side, even the psychology behind it all.
Exactly. And we're going to start right at the beginning with the physical thing itself, the building, how history shaped what we actually see. Because the buildings, they're more than just wood and stone.
Right. The sources put it really well, calling them provocative projections of what Americans wanted to be. It's like the styles themselves tell a story about aspirations.
Perfectly put. These styles are packed with meaning. Let's take the Georgian style, for instance. Think roughly 1715 to 1780. It screams established order, hierarchy.
You see it a lot down south, right? But examples popped up elsewhere, too.
Oh, yeah. Like the Valentine Varian House in New York. You look at the fieldstone, the perfect symmetry, those classical details around the door pediments, fluted pilasters. It's all about projecting tradition, stability, looking back to Europe.
Okay, so then the U.S. becomes its own nation after 1780.
Huh.
The style shifts to reflect that, moving into the federal period. It's still got that symmetry, but it feels different, more refined.
Definitely more refined. Federal, say, 1780 to 1820 is like the American interpretation. It's signaling a new kind of independence, a bit more elegant, maybe. And you start seeing practical changes, too.
Like with windows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Window glass starts getting made more in the U.S., so you could get bigger sheets. That totally changes how a house looks from the outside, and houses often became 3 stories tall.
And there's that interesting detail about the window height changing on each floor.
The windows actually get a little shorter as you go up each story. It's subtle, but it visually makes the house feel more grounded, more substantial.
And the roof, that's a big visual cue. The pitch changing so much.
Huge difference. Georgian roofs were often quite steep. Federal style, much shallower. We're talking maybe a 4 and 12 pitch. So for every 12 inches across, the roof only goes up 4 inches.
Makes it look much lower, sleeker, almost flat compared to earlier styles.
Right. It's part of that cleaner post-colonial feel.
Yes.
William Hamilton's Woodlands in Philly is a great early example showing that shift.
Okay, fast forward a bit. Mid to late 19th century. The sources talk about the stick style. Roughly 1860 to 1890. It looks like it's all about showing off the structure.
It looks like that, yeah. But it's kind of ornamental about it. You see those steeply pitched roofs again, and then these decorative wooden boards, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, laid right on top of the siding.
So they're suggesting a timber frame underneath.
Kind of suggesting it, yeah. But here's the catch. By this time, a lot of houses were built using balloon framing. Super efficient, used smaller, standardized pieces of wood, didn't need those big, visible timbers.
So the sticks on the outside were often just for show, an illusion.
Pretty much. It was decorative, maybe trying to look like older European half-timbered houses, but applied onto a modern frame. A bit of architectural storytelling, you could say.
Fascinating. And then right on its heels, almost overlapping, comes the shingle style, 1880 to 1905. This sounds like a reaction, like it's simplifying things again.
It really was. Vincent Scully, the architectural historian who helped define it, saw it evolving from Queen Anne and older colonial styles. The beauty of shingle style is how it pulls everything together.
How so?
Well, inside, the floor plans became much more open, more fluid, really different from the boxy rooms before. And then outside, the whole building gets wrapped in shingles, usually left to weather naturally.
Like a continuous skin.
Exactly. It unified all those complex shapes and volumes underneath into one cohesive sculptural form. It projected this kind of rustic, flowing, almost luxurious simplicity, very different from the stick style's busyness.
That idea of projecting an image, whether it's national identity or rustic luxury, connects perfectly to how we sell houses now. The physical structure is one thing, but making it valuable involves home staging.
Oh, absolutely. Staging is basically applied psychology for the real estate market. You're trying to create a blank canvas, but an aspirational one.
Letting the buyer dream about their life in your home, as the source puts it, which means getting rid of the current owner's life, right?
Ruthlessly. That's the word used. Ruthless uncluttering. Or pre-packing. All the personal collections, the unique decorative pieces, too much furniture, it has to go. It just distracts buyers. They can't see themselves there.
And this process starts way before they walk in the door. It starts with the photos online, and then that crucial moment, the curb appeal, the drive-by.
That drive-by is make or break. If the outside looks messy or uninviting, they might not even bother going inside, no matter how good the online photos were.
So, assuming they get inside, the stager creates these little scenes, vignettes. There's a psychology to that, too.
Definitely. Like grouping objects in odd numbers, threes, fives, sevens. It sounds weird, but apparently our eyes find odd numbers more dynamic, less easy to mentally categorize and dismiss.
Huh. So 3 vases on a table hold your attention longer than 2.
That's the idea. It keeps the eye moving. Same with creating overlap between objects and arranging things in triangles to guide the eye through the room. It's about creating flow and interest.
It's subtle stuff, even down to the curtains.
Oh yeah, the details matter. Curtains, the sources say, should either stop exactly to 1 or 1/4 inches off the floor.
That precise.
That precise. Or they should pool on the floor, but like really pool intentionally. Anything in between just looks like a mistake, like you didn't measure properly. Sloppy. Same with furniture spacing in living rooms needs to feel open, not cramped.
That level of control, managing perception down to the inch, it's a good transition. Because once you have the house, its value and where it even is are shaped by much bigger forces, the social landscape.
Exactly. And we have to start with zoning. U.S. zoning is, well, it's kind of its own beast compared to other countries.
How so? It's mostly done at the local level, right? City by city, town by town.
Primarily, yes. Municipal level. And unlike, say, the UK or Canada, where planning might be more flexible or context-based, U.S. zoning tends to be super prescriptive. It lays out exactly what you can build, how high, how dense, how many parking spots. Very detailed.
And it all operates under pretty strict constitutional limits about private property rights, lots of court cases involved.
Constantly. But the key thing, especially about early zoning, is why it was implemented. The core drive, according to the sources, was overwhelmingly about preserving property values.
And achieving that often meant separating uses very strictly.
Very strictly. Creating these pure residential areas, often explicitly to protect wealthier single-family neighborhoods from what they saw as the negative influences of apartments, businesses, or industry, and, frankly, from working-class people who are often immigrants or minorities.
So it wasn't just about planning a functional city, it was actively about exclusion.
That was a major, often intended consequence. The landmark 1926 Supreme Court case, Euclid v. Ambler Realty, essentially gave the constitutional green light for this kind of use-based segregation. It said separating zones served the public welfare.
And that legal power then fueled a massive shift in where Americans lived the move to the suburbs, which was a total reversal of the historical pattern, wasn't it?
Completely. For centuries, millennia even in Europe, the best addresses were close to the city center, the walking city. In the U.S., particularly in the 20th century, that flipped. The wealthy and middle class increasingly moved out.
And this wasn't just a natural drift. Government policy played a huge role, especially after the New Deal.
A monumental role. Federal housing policies, things like mortgage insurance that made buying homes easier, were revolutionary. But they came with a dark side. They actively institutionalized racial and ethnic discrimination.
Through redlining and bank practices, right? Denying loans based on neighborhood demographics.
Exactly. Banks, often using government-created maps, literally drew red lines around minority or mixed-race neighborhoods and refused to lend there. They saw urban diversity, the melting pot, as inherently risky. It was baked into the financial system.
Leading to massive disinvestment in cities.
Catastrophic disinvestment. St. Louis is a stark example. It was the 4th biggest U.S. city. Then its population just collapsed from over 800,000 in 1940 down to around 450,000 by 1980. Huge areas became practically abandoned.
And then adding fuel to the fire, there was this Cold War idea pushing people out too.
Yeah, defense through decentralization. The thinking in the 50s was that spreading people out would make the U.S. less vulnerable to nuclear attack.
Which sounds like a convenient excuse to build highways.
It provided powerful political cover, absolutely.
Yeah.
That national security argument helped push through the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. Trillions poured into roads designed primarily for cars moving out of cities, which further starved public transit and locked in that sprawling, car-dependent suburban model.
And now, decades later, we're seeing this strange reversal, the Great Inversion, or the new urban crisis.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Now you have more affluent, educated, often younger white Americans moving back into cities, pushing up prices, gentrification, and at the same time,
Minorities, immigrants, the less affluent are getting pushed out into the older suburbs.
exactly. Poverty and many of the social problems once associated with inner cities are now increasingly concentrating in those first-ring suburbs. The geography of inequality is shifting.
That tension between policy goals, profit motives, and social outcomes is perfectly illustrated by the story of Stuyvesant Town in New York City. It wasn't just apartments, it was meant to be something more.
It was a social experiment, in a way. Built by MetLife after WWII for middle-class vets and families, the city gave MetLife huge tax breaks for 25 years.
And in return,
MetLife agreed to cap its profit at 6% a year and keep the rents low and stable for most units. It was designed as protected middle-income housing.
but things changed when MetLife went public and sold it off.
Right. The new owners, Tishman Speyer, bought it for a record price and immediately tried to flip it into luxury housing. They started aggressively deregulating apartments, trying to jack up rents, even while they were still taking tax breaks meant for affordability.
That didn't end well, did it?
It was a disaster. They couldn't get the luxury rents they projected. Then came the Roberts court case, a huge tenant lawsuit. The courts ruled Tishman Speyer had illegally deregulated thousands of apartments while taking those tax benefits.
So they had to roll back rents.
They had to roll them back, the projected income vanished, and the whole thing defaulted spectacularly. It proved the market couldn't actually support those luxury prices there. The original middle-income model, backed by policy, was what made sense financially, not the speculative luxury play.
And you can't talk about New York's physical shape, especially the infrastructure enabling sprawl, without mentioning Robert Moses.
Oh, Moses, a figure of almost mythical power. His influence was just immense.
What was his secret? How did he get so much done, for better or worse?
He controlled multiple agencies at once: city parks, state parks, bridge authorities, highway construction. He basically created his own power base, often using state authority to override city objections. He wasn't just planning, he controlled the building, the funding, everything.
And the results sometimes didn't match the intentions, like the Bronx Whitestone Bridge.
A perfect example of unintended consequences, or maybe poorly conceived goals. It was supposed to relieve traffic on the older bridges.
Did it?
Not really.
No.
In his first year, it generated something like 6 million new car trips. Traffic on the old bridges stayed about the same or even went up a bit. So now, instead of 4 jammed bridges, New York had 6 jammed bridges.
Classic induced demand. Build more roads, get more traffic.
Exactly. It shows how massive infrastructure projects, driven by figures like Moses, could reshape the landscape without actually solving the underlying problems.
Okay, that history and policy context is crucial. But let's shift now to how people are actively building wealth with property today. The wealth engine. And the BRRR method seems central for investors looking to scale.
BRRRR: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yeah, it's huge because it tackles the biggest problem for investors growing a portfolio: running out of cash.
Right. Instead of your money getting stuck as equity in one property.
You use the refinance step to pull your initial investment, and hopefully more, back out. You buy a property that needs work, usually below market value, fix it up, get a tenant in there paying rent.
Stabilize the income.
Right. Then you go to the bank. Because you've increased the property's value through the rehab and have rental income, the bank appraises it for much more than what you have into it.
And the refinance lets you borrow against that new, higher value.
Exactly. And if you do it right, the new loan is bigger than your total initial cash investment plus rehab costs. The example in the source showed someone putting in $65K total, refinancing, and getting $80 back.
So they got all their initial cash back, plus an extra $15K, and they still own the cash-flowing rental property.
Yeah.
That's the magic. The deal essentially becomes free, you've got your capital back plus profit, and you can immediately roll that $80K into the next deal. That's the repeat part. That's how you scale.
Makes sense. So to make that refinance step work optimally, what kind of rehabs add the most value for the appraisal?
Well, adding usable square footage is always big. More bedrooms, more bathrooms, those directly impact the comparable sales data appraisers use.
And the roof. The source mentioned doing the roof before refinancing.
Yeah, that's a smart move. It's a major expense, obviously. But a new roof makes the property much more attractive to lenders, removes a big potential objection, and significantly boosts the appraised value. You'll likely recoup a good chunk of that roof cost in the cash-out refi.
Yeah. Now, on the buying side, finding those deals, there was an interesting tip about negotiation, almost counterintuitive.
Yeah, the idea that if a seller gives you a really great price, don't push it. Don't try to haggle for another $1,000.
Why not? Isn't negotiation key?
It is, but the best deals, The really motivated sellers making maybe an emotional decision to just get rid of the property quickly. Those deals are fragile. If you start nickel and diming them, they might just pause, rethink, and the opportunity vanishes. If the price is great, just take it. Lock it down fast.
Got it. Okay, so you've bought the property, maybe rehabbed it. Now comes the management.
Mm-hmm.
The source was pretty blunt here. The secret to being a happy, successful landlord: control.
It sounds harsh, but it's about managing the process, not being controlled by it. Landlords who are miserable are usually the ones who've lost control of the situation. Late rent, property damage, constant conflicts.
And maintaining control starts with setting expectations.
Yeah.
Training your tenants, as they put it.
Right. It's not about being mean. It's about clarity and consistency. Having clear, written policies for everything: rent, payment, repairs, communication, and sticking to them. No exceptions. Treating everyone the same prevents accusations of favoritism and keeps things professional.
And the screening process is the first gate for that control. The source highlighted the security deposit as a key indicator.
Yeah, if an applicant struggles to come up with the deposit before moving in, it's a pretty big red flag about their ability to consistently pay rent after moving in. It's a basic financial responsibility test.
And documentation. Always get it in writing.
Always. He who has the best paperwork wins. That applies to leases, policy reminders, even notes from phone calls about a leak. It keeps you organized, proves communication, and is absolutely essential if you ever end up in court, like for an eviction. Paper trail is king.
Doing all this yourself, especially as you grow or invest remotely, sounds overwhelming. Building a good team seems critical.
Absolutely essential. You can't scale effectively alone. And the best way to find good people, investor-savvy agents, lenders who get it, reliable property managers, is referrals from other successful investors.
That idea of wealth has gravity. Good people tend to know other good people.
Exactly. Your real estate agent in particular needs to understand investing is different from just helping someone buy their dream home. They need connections to inspectors, contractors, maybe even lenders who specialize in investment properties.
And contractors. Always a potential headache. How do you manage that risk, especially with the money?
Rule number 1, never ever pay the entire job amount up front. You lose all leverage immediately.
Makes sense. What about materials?
Especially when you're working with someone new, it's often smarter for you, the investor, to pay for the materials directly yourself. Order them, have them delivered. It removes the temptation for a contractor to take a big materials deposit and disappear. Their payment becomes tied directly to completing the labor.
Good tip. And we need to be aware that the good people know good people thing can work backwards too.
Unfortunately, yes. If you have someone on your team, say a property manager or a lead contractor who isn't great, their recommendations for other staff or subcontractors are likely to be subpar too. Bad tends to attract bad. You have to constantly evaluate everyone on the team.
Okay, let's dive into maybe the most powerful part of the wealth engine for long-term players: tax optimization. And the 1031 exchange is the star here.
It's incredibly powerful, yeah. It lets you sell an investment property and defer paying capital gains tax if you reinvest the proceeds into another like-kind investment property.
Keyword being defer, right? Not eliminate.
Right. It's a deferral. You push the tax bill down the road, but you can keep doing it, exchange after exchange, potentially for your entire investing career. Maybe even until death, at which point your heirs might get a stepped-up basis, effectively wiping out the deferred gain. But during your life, it's deferral.
And there are strict rules to defer all the game.
Mm-hmm.
About the value of the replacement property.
Super strict, and this trips people up. To defer 100% of the gain, the new property or properties you buy must be equal to or greater than the net sales price of the property you sold. And critically, you must reinvest all the cash proceeds, the equity. If the new property costs less or you pull cash out, that difference is taxable boot.
And the timeline is tight too.
Very tight. You have only 45 days from the day you sell your old property to formally identify, in writing, the potential properties you might buy. And then you have a total of 180 days from the sale date to actually close on the purchase of one or more of those identified properties. Miss either deadline, the whole exchange fails, and the sale becomes taxable that year.
Okay. Beyond the 1031, there's also the goal for many landlords to get that 20% qualified business income deduction on their rental income. That requires proving it's a trade or business, not just passive investing.
Right, and this is murky territory. The IRS doesn't have a super clear definition. It's subjective. They want to see that you're involved actively, regularly, continuously in the operations, more than just collecting rent and hiring someone else for everything.
Is there a rule of thumb, like hours spent?
There's no official magic number, but tax pros often talk about needing to document significant time. Some suggest aiming for at least 250 hours a year spent on managing the rental activities. Things like screening tenants, dealing with repairs yourself, bookkeeping, setting policies, inspecting the property, stuff that shows you're running it like a real business, not just passively holding an asset. You definitely need tax advice here.
And one more powerful tax strategy, using retirement accounts, like a self-directed Roth IRA, to own rental property.
This is amazing for long-term tax-free growth. If your Roth IRA legally owns the property and the rules for self-directed accounts must be followed carefully, then all the rental income flows into the Roth tax-free.
And grows tax-free within the account.
Exactly. And then the real kicker. When you eventually sell the property, presumably in retirement when you take distributions from the Roth, all the appreciation, all the proceeds from the sale can be completely tax-free too. That example of turning $100 into 330K inside a Roth, all tax-free, that's the power of compounding without the drag of taxes.
Wow. Okay, we've hit the physical structure, the social forces, the financial engine. The last piece is the human element, the psychology of transactions and influence, starting with valuation, how we perceive price and risk.
Right. For income properties, investors live and breathe the cap rate, capitalization rate. But it's crucial to understand what it actually measures. It's not the same as ROI, return on investment.
ROI is your personal return on the cash you put in. So what is the cap rate measuring?
You calculate it by dividing the property's net operating income, NOI, by its purchase price. But conceptually, the source calls it a measurement of market sentiment. It tells you how the overall market feels about the risk and future prospects of that particular income stream in that location.
So a lower cap rate means the market thinks it's safer or has more growth potential, so they're willing to pay a higher price for the same amount of income.
Precisely. And a higher cap rate means the market perceives more risk, so they demand a higher initial return, lower price, for that income stream. It perfectly reflects that fundamental investing rule: there ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
You want higher potential returns. You have to accept higher risk.
That's the trade-off, always. Look at historical data. Small cap stocks might average higher returns, maybe 12%, but they come with wild swings volatility around 30% or more. Safer assets like bonds give you lower returns, but much less volatility. Risk is the price of admission for potentially higher rewards.
And understanding that psychology of risk and reward is key in negotiation. The source mentions the rejection then retreat technique. How does that work?
It's a classic persuasion tactic. It plays on two powerful psychological triggers: reciprocity and contrast. You start by making a big request, one you actually expect the other person to reject, maybe an asking price that's way too high or terms that are really demanding.
They say no. Then what?
Then you retreat to a smaller, more reasonable request, which was actually your real goal all along.
And why is that so effective?
Two reasons. First, your retreat looks like a concession. The rule of reciprocity makes the other person feel obligated to also make a concession, often by agreeing to your smaller request. You gave something up, even if it was something you never expected to get, so they feel they should too.
And the contrast part.
The contrast principle. After hearing the huge, unreasonable first request, your actual smaller request seems tiny and much more acceptable by comparison. It reframes their perception of what's reasonable.
Clever. So, in property deals, anchor high, but be ready to pivot if they stick on price.
Exactly. Anchor high. But if you hit a wall on price, shift the focus to non-monetary terms. People get fixated on the dollar amount, try negotiating things like the closing date, who pays for certain repairs, maybe including or excluding certain appliances or furniture, towels, or who handles permit issues. These things might be valuable to them, but less costly for you. It helps bend their reality away from just the price tag.
And the overall mindset for negotiation or sales shouldn't be aggressive.
No, the best negotiators, the best salespeople, they listen more than they talk. They practice empathy. They understand that hearing no isn't the end.
It's the beginning.
Often, yeah. No might mean not yet, or I need more information, or I'm not comfortable with this part. It opens the door to understanding the real objection and finding a solution. That's where humans still beat algorithms' genuine listening and thoughtful response.
And there's a formula for effectively communicating a proposal, like selling a property or an idea.
A simple but powerful one. First, clearly define the other person's desire. What do they really want? Second, explain your plan to get them there, and it needs to make logical sense to them. Third, vividly paint a picture of success. What will life look like once they achieve that desire through your plan? Desire, plan, outcome.
That brings everything together, the structure, the market forces, the finance, the human interaction. It's about being intentional, understanding the system, and then acting.
Absolutely. Action beats inaction. Building the right habits, whether in analysis or management or negotiation, that's what moves you forward.
This has been an incredibly thorough deep dive. We've journeyed from the symbolism of Georgian houses through the deep impact of zoning and redlining into the nuts and bolts of BRRR and 1031s, and finally landed on the psychology of making the deal happen. Property really is where history, money, and social forces collide.
It truly is. And we've spent all this time looking at the systems, the legal ones, the financial ones, the physical ones that people use to build wealth and secure assets. But we also saw how systems like zoning, created with one stated purpose, could be, well, used for very different, sometimes exclusionary ends.
Which underscores the need for critical thinking about all systems and information.
Definitely. And that leads us to the final, quite provocative thought from the source material. It asks you, the listener, to really consider the influence of things you don't see or things you take for granted in your own decisions.
Okay, what's the specific point raised?
Well, the source material presents a perspective alleging that the global response to COVID-19, specifically the lockdowns, was part of a larger blueprint orchestrated by what it calls a cult-controlled state.
Okay, and the alleged purpose.
According to this view, the goal was to undermine independent livelihoods and increase dependency on authority. And it suggests this was achieved by deliberately generating fear around a virus described in the material as non-existent deadly to ensure populations would comply without question, assuming the authorities knew best.
Now, regardless of how anyone feels about that specific claim, the source uses it to make a broader point about questioning information, doesn't it?
Exactly. It frames it as a stark example of needing constant vigilance. The core message seems to be about the struggle for illumination, that ongoing conscious choice we all face. Do we actively seek understanding, question sources, apply critical thought, or do we just accept the narrative we're given, close our minds?
Because in a world saturated with information and potential misinformation, deciding who to trust and what to believe is fundamental.
It's fundamental to everything, especially when making decisions about your finances, your assets, your future.
So the final question for you listening, as you take in everything we've discussed today about real estate strategy, policy, and psychology, is this. What influence do the unseen forces, the assumed expertise of others, the narratives you don't challenge, maybe even deliberately engineered fear, have on your crucial decisions? Decisions about securing your assets, about defining your own path.
That choice between critical engagement and passive acceptance, between illumination and ignorance, that really is the underlying struggle that shapes whether our actions lead to success or failure.
A really potent thought to leave things on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.